I want to start with something that doesn't sound like intelligence, at least not at first. It looks like awareness, sensitivity, a mind that never really relaxes. You notice things quickly. You read people without trying. You pick up on tension before anyone says a word. And for a long time, you probably thought that was just who you are. But there's a deeper reason. Because sometimes the way you think wasn't something you chose. It was something you learned from experience, from situations where paying attention wasn't optional, where missing something had consequences, where understanding people meant staying safe. And over time, your brain adapted. It became sharper, more alert, more precise. Not because it wanted to, but because it had to. So let's talk about the signs, not the obvious ones, the subtle ones, the ones that don't look like strength, but actually are. The first sign is that you read people instantly, not just what they say, but how they say it, their tone, their pauses, their energy. You don't need long conversations. You just know. And it's not magic. It's pattern recognition. Your brain learned to detect small shifts because those shifts mattered. The second sign is that you overanalyze interactions after something happens. It doesn't end for you. You replay it. You look for meaning, for signals, for anything you might have missed. And even when everything is fine, your mind keeps going. Not because you want to overthink, but because your brain is used to scanning for risk. The third sign is that you feel responsible for how others feel. If someone is upset, you notice immediately. And something inside you says, fix it. Even when no one asked. Even when it's not your role. Because at some point, you learned that other people's emotions affected your safety. So now, you try to manage them. The fourth sign is that you struggle to relax, not physically, mentally. Even in calm environments, your mind stays active, observing, predicting, preparing, because stillness feels unfamiliar, or even unsafe. Your brain isn't used to nothing happening. It's used to being ready. The fifth sign is that you think ahead constantly. You don't just see what's happening. You see what could happen. Possible outcomes, possible problems, possible reactions. And while that can look like intelligence, it often feels like pressure, because now you feel responsible for avoiding everything that could go wrong. The sixth sign is that you feel different around people. Not better, not worse, just out of sync. Conversations can feel shallow, or too fast, or slightly off, because while others are reacting, you're already analyzing. And that creates distance, not because you want it, but because your experience isn't being matched. And the seventh sign is something deeper. You're highly self-aware. You notice your thoughts, your reactions, your patterns. You reflect, you question, you analyze yourself. The same way you analyze everything else, and while that sounds like a strength, it can also be exhausting. Because your mind rarely stops. But here's the part that matters. None of this means something is wrong with you. It means something happened. That required you to become this way. Your brain adapted. It learned how to protect you. And it did it well. Maybe too well, because you're using that same level of awareness in situations that don't require it. And that's where the tension comes from. Not from your intelligence, but from where it came from. So the goal isn't to lose this ability, it's to understand it, to recognize when your mind is protecting you, and when it's just repeating a pattern. Because once you see the difference, something shifts. You stop treating every signal as something urgent. You stop reacting to every thought as if it's important, and slowly, that constant pressure begins to ease. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel a little more space, a little more control, a little more calm. Because your intelligence was never the problem. It was just shaped by something deeper. And once you understand that, you don't just see yourself differently, you relate to yourself differently. With less pressure, less judgment, and more clarity. And maybe for the first time, what once felt like a burden starts to feel like something else. Not just something that protected you, but something that can now help you move forward. And once you begin to see it that way, something else starts to change, not in your abilities, but in how you use them. Because before, your awareness felt automatic, like something that controlled you. Now, it becomes something you can direct. You still notice everything. The tone shifts, the small changes, the unspoken signals, but you don't treat all of them as equally important. You begin to ask a different question. Does this actually matter right now? And that question creates distance. Distance between what you notice and what you react to. Because for a long time, those two things were the same. If you noticed something, you responded immediately. Now, there's a pause. And inside that pause, you have a choice to engage or not, to analyze further or let it go. And that's where your intelligence changes form. It stops being something that constantly scans for problems and becomes something that helps you navigate. Not perfectly, but intentionally. There's also something else that begins to happen. Your relationship with control starts to shift, because a lot of what you were doing was trying to stay ahead, to predict everything, to avoid every possible outcome. But now, you start to see something clearly. You were never fully in control. It just felt that way. And holding on to that illusion was exhausting. So instead of trying to control everything, you start allowing more uncertainty, more unpredictability, more moments where you don't have all the answers. And surprisingly, nothing breaks. You're still okay. And that experience matters because your brain doesn't change from logic. It changes from evidence, from moments where you expect something to go wrong. And it doesn't. Or it does. And you handle it anyway. And over time, that builds something new. Trust, not in the outside world, but in yourself. Your ability to respond. Your ability to adapt. Your ability to stay grounded, even when things aren't fully clear. And that changes how your mind feels. It's still aware, still sharp, still perceptive. But it's not tense all the time. It's not searching for danger in every detail. It's not trying to solve everything before it happens. It becomes quieter, not silent, but calmer. And in that calm, something becomes possible that wasn't before. Presence, being in a moment, without analyzing it, experiencing something, without trying to predict where it leads. And that's a different way of living. Not less intelligent, but less burdened by that intelligence. Because what once helped you survive doesn't have to control how you live now. And when you realize that, you don't lose your awareness, you gain something else. Freedom, the ability to notice everything without carrying all of it, the ability to think deeply without getting lost, the ability to feel without needing to fix everything. And maybe that's the real shift, not becoming someone new, but finally becoming someone who can use their mind without being used by it.